Okay, so my first notable would be Bloodstained. I didn't expect a lot out of this one because I don't know, it took so long, and we've seen so many of these games that people go, Kickstarter, a game from my childhood, oh, the developer, finally they're going to get a chance to make the game they've always wanted to make, and it always seems like that was a good idea, and so many of them have just been really disappointing. And this one really worked for me. I had a lot of fun with it. Hours flew by while I was playing. It was sort of campy and silly, but I think that worked really well. The individual super moves for the different weapons kept it really interesting, and you would level up the moves by doing a finishing blow with that move, so it was like a great incentive to do that. It encouraged like the use of all the different weapons. Really easy to like quick swap through all that stuff. Challenging but fair bosses. David Hayter's in it. I didn't beat it, but it was a game that really surprised me, and I really dug. Did you see any of that one?
Crafting system too, didn't it?
It did have crafting, which on paper I would think, oh my god, now you're throwing crafting into, like, what else is it going to be? Open world survival? But actually the crafting was fun. It just and it didn't, I never felt like I needed to use it, but it was there, and that was pretty good. I see that they got a new one coming out, like a sequel to that 8-bit version they did.
Oh yeah, that one was, I think that one came out recently, right? I remember seeing some stuff about it. I definitely did like the more modern looking one. I thought that looked pretty cool. The aesthetics were interesting. There were some weird visuals, definitely, though. Like, the thing I remember most is, like, there's, like, a giant cat's paw coming out from, like, behind the screen or something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The game really embraces the sort of silly, over-the-topness of it, because it could go really serious and dramatic with the whole vampire thing, but I think they just realized, this is fun, let's have a lot of fun. But that's all I really have on that one.
Yeah, you got to definitely do something a little bit different.
Yeah, while retaining what makes it great. I felt like the visuals weren't quite in my imagination of what the Symphony of the Night would look like even better. It kind of seemed a bit cheaper the way they do sort of like mobile games, like kind of those visuals. It felt very Japanese, like an efficient way to do it, and maybe that's just how the tech works now, but I was kind of hoping for a bit more of like a hand-drawn, I don't know, it didn't quite have that tangible feel. It felt a little kind of glossy and cheap to me.
Meets a little bit closer to Cuphead when it might have been kind of more up your alley.
Yeah. A game that we both played together that came out in 2019, way back in 2019, Apex Legends. I was pretty impressed with this. I mean, it was that it had a surprise release. I love what Vincent Zampanella does. The guy basically made Call of Duty what it is, and he did the incredible Titanfall 1 and 2, and they took all that stuff he knows about how to make a game feel really good running around and shooting, put it in a battle royale, and made one of the biggest titles of the year. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, it was pretty solid. I mean, I know a lot of people complained a lot about like the experiences they would have in games like PUBG, where you'd wander around and get sniped by somebody you didn't even see. That game felt, this Apex specifically, felt a lot more actiony. It felt like it felt like I could actually win the game, which we did win once.
Oh my god!
It was kind of, I think it was by accident, but let that slide. But yeah, I mean, it turned into quite a powerhouse of a game. I wasn't sure what was going to happen to it, initially, because I mean, you see a lot of these kind of games pop up during that wave of these battle royale types that they just kind of showed up and fizzled out. And this one really had some staying power, and it still does, as far as I know.
God, it's to me, it feels like in the category of, let's take something that we know works really, really well and make it a battle royale, where Fortnite was going to be sort of like a builder, an open world. No, it was going to be like a co-op survival game, and then they made it to a battle royale that ended up being the most popular one of all time. PUBG is a little more like realistic and kind of janky PC, but like they have been honing that type of gameplay in the Titanfall series. It's so sharp that it made perfect sense. Like when I think about playing Apex, I think like running, diving, launching, sliding away from cover, and all that awesome movement really, really works well. And because you have a lot of shields and stuff, if somebody shoots you from really far away, you're not going to die as quickly as you would in, say, PUBG, where you feel like a little more exposed. And then the evolution of that, of taking something that works so well and just slapping Battle Royale on it, is stuff like Tetris and the new Mario games that are coming out, and just kind of that seems to be the evolution of like, well, anything that works, let's call it a battle royale.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Oh, and how could we can't mention Apex without talking about when we got into that party with the Russian guy, and I didn't have him on the stream because I was worried. I don't know what people are going to say, but he just kept telling. What was he saying to? He was way better than us, and he was giving us advice.
Yeah, he was giving us advice. He was trying to keep us from basically ruining the game for him. And I remember him saying something like, "All right, whatever you do, do not shoot. Don't shoot. Don't."
It was sort of like Braveheart telling the troops to hold before the horses come in and they bring up the spears. Don't shoot. Yeah, ice cold Russian man.
He was basically playing with us, and we were both like Leroy Jenkins. You know, I mean,
yeah. This is fun. We're new. All right. How about Ape Out? That was a big surprise of the year. Ape Out, not something I'd want to go back to. Not something that I totally enjoyed the whole way through, but as an idea, bloody brilliant. A dynamic soundtrack of percussion. That alone deserves, I would give that my sort of 2019, that gets an award for like innovation in sound design and how to do music in a game. It's so beautiful to see, here's a new idea. And then the actual gameplay was very similar to Hotline Miami, except with a lot less variety, which is why I think I got a little bit tired of the game. But in terms of its visual style and the sound, it carried me enough to enjoy playing about half of it. But the lack of attack variety, because it was always grab somebody, throw them, or punch them, that eventually kind of petered my interest out on it.
Yeah, I think artistically the game was just phenomenal. Like the way that the music changed whenever action started heating up or cool down, I thought that was really well done. And then the simple graphics, like the way it was just kind of, it was more like silhouettes, right? Like I know there's probably a particular name for that art style, in fact, but it made me think back to like maybe something from like 1960s. I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the sort of they did a lot of that with the visuals and like on movie posters and almost like the James Bond intro. I'm always a sucker for when video games manage to, like Hollow Knight, when they do something that is so simple but so effective. Like a lot of Nintendo stuff where Link's Awakening, Yoshi's Woolly World, Mario 64, Breath of the Wild, stuff that looks a lot better because they've found a way to be super effective, and Ape Out is a great example of that. How about Void Bastards? I didn't play a lot of this, but in my Games Pass, in 2019, I started writing down all these PC games I had missed. Void Bastards was one of them, and to my surprise, almost all of them were available on Games Pass. So Games Pass is one of my favorite things of 2019. I love the idea of Void Bastards. It's a roguelike. You take control of these different characters, they're criminals or whatever, but you take control of different characters, different skills. You're deciding which ships to go on, getting precious supplies, dealing with enemies. It looks like a comic book come to life. The enemies have very few frames of animation. And it's got this like British style of humor. It's like a real kind of dark humor, but silly. It's really kind of dangerous and moment to moment, like exhilarating. And you're making a lot of really fun decisions about, tough decisions like what's the resource I want to get here. I didn't play a lot of it, but when I did play it on Games Pass, it was one of my favorite moments of the year. And I love the atmosphere of the game.
Yeah, pretty much my experience was getting to see you stream it, and I just thought it looked aesthetically, pleasing, pretty decent, and overall it just looked like a very competent roguelike game. So, I mean, it just seemed like a good, especially like you said, being on Games Pass. Like, how can you beat that, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about Games Pass is it's so fun to try a game and not have an attachment of I dropped money on this. I paid $50 to $90 and now I'm stuck with it. Whereas it kind of brings back the pure joy of just exploring a game. What is this game about? I like some of it. I don't like all of it. And I had a good time. And I know it seems like that's the way that games media is going. And that's the way they seem to want it to be. And in kind of in the best case scenario, I think it's going to lead to better experiences.
Yeah, I think it particularly works well with roguelikes too, because I don't know about you, but like whenever I pick up a roguelike, it's kind of like I rarely ever finish them. I like to play them and kind of get a sense of them and just kind of enjoy a little bit of that, but I don't really want like have to get to the point where it's a slog to go through. And because at some point you're just going to lose, and you'll have made a whole bunch of progress, and you just have to accept that you've lost it, and there's nothing you can do about it. But like you said, just being able to pick it up on Games Pass, play it for a little bit, not feel like you paid a huge lump sum of money for strictly that one game, that really makes it for me, I think.
Yeah. How about Disco Elysium? I didn't get too far in this, but I love the ideas of it. The way that everything is, your party members are your personality traits. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of great writing. There's lots to explore, so much atmosphere. It feels very, very mature, and it just felt like there's so many games I see out there that are just, man, you're making another one of those, and you're making a generic one of those, and I guess it feels like they're making it because they know how to do it, and they know that it makes money, and it's so wonderful to see something come out and really rethink, using like a lot of traditional gameplay mechanics, but rethink how those mechanics can actually tell the story. And I just would love to give it an honorable mention, and anyone that is into traditional RPGs but wants something a bit more mature and something different should check it out.
Yeah, it's one that I haven't picked up yet, but I actually really want to get around to it. I think it's even on sale right now, because it was released about a year ago. And it's such a weird game, because like I don't think I can think of games that allow you to die of a heart attack within the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And just story-wise, it looked like they really did whatever they wanted. I mean, the guys behind it, the studio, is just, they were kind of a little bit unique themselves. I remember at E3 or whichever it was, like Game Awards or one of the shows, I remember them like alluding to the Communist Manifesto or something, like when they were doing their speech for winning the award. And I don't think anybody on the show actually caught it until after the fact or something. That was just kind of, they're kind of goofy.
And it seems like the writing is at the forefront, whereas it's some things I've heard lately in the game industry is that writing is really not treated as importantly as it should be. So it's always nice to see that up high. Let's talk about games that are so good, so competent, but not great. And a game that I played all the way through, finally I'm talking about a game I completed, is Jedi Fallen Order. This game to me was, like, technically there's nothing to complain about. Everything feels good, it looks good, it's paced pretty nicely, there's a lot of things you can do, the combat feels great with the humans and bosses. I felt like it felt like kind of a bit generic, where I was fighting scorpions all the time and like weird animals, and it almost felt like a meta joke on Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo, or like the first Nintendo Star Wars games where you fight Darth Vader and he turns into a scorpion. Like, all the platforming and traversal was a really nice blend of what Respawn, who made Apex Legends and Titanfall, what they're good at, and that actually worked really, really well with Jedi powers. But I found the Metroid exploration made it feel pretty tedious, kind of lost momentum, whereas a game like that, I would rather it be more linear. Let's focus on making it exciting, making it more cinematic. And I found the main character really hard to relate to. I found him like super annoying. He would have been a great villain. He would have been a really great, actually, like petulant Dark Jedi. But it's a game that I can barely complain about, but just is definitely, I could never consider as a game of the year, but was pretty darn solid.
Yeah, I think I remember what I remember saying about it was something like, to me it felt like a game that was from the 360 or PS3 era that had somehow time traveled forward, because it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, to me, it's like, it felt like what would have been a good game from that era brought forward one generation, and it's like you can't really complain about it, but it's like it nothing really wowed you.
Yeah, and then all the story stuff just felt very, this is how we tell a story in a PS4 era game. Here's some faces. They have that weird looking PS4 teeth and mouth, and yeah, it's just this. I watched the ending actually. It looks like maybe if I was younger, it would be a lot more exciting. Like if I was really young and into Star Wars and you get to fight some exciting Sith people and do all that stuff. But I guess kind of been there, done that, where this was really exciting when it was on Uncharted and it was done a lot better in Tomb Raider. But now it needed a bit more, or like to maybe just be trimmed down. I think what it fell victim to was we need this to be a AAA game, so it needs to be bigger, and let's make it a Metroidvania because then you can reuse a lot of the same environments, and let's throw in a bunch of random enemies instead of like what's fun is fighting with a lightsaber. I don't want to fight a bloody scorpion. So I think that it kind of fell to bloat. And
I was gonna say like almost like they reskinned some like a popular game of the that current generation of games then.
Absolutely, yeah, because so much of it didn't feel like Star Wars. And, on the other side of things, this year, EA has released a cheaper game, Star Wars Squadrons, which is a great throwback to TIE Fighter X-Wing of the 90s. It basically takes everything that was good about those games, makes a little more modern, and they cut everything else down. You don't have to... You click through the different hubs, like when you're doing your briefing or when you're going to your ship. It's just like the old games where they're not going to bother rendering your character model or trying to figure out how to get you to walk around. They cut all these corners, keep the good stuff, and you end up with this cheaper game that I think is just so much stronger for it. There's like no padding in the game. It's amazing.
It's crazy. It's like we're getting this like Star Wars on a budget kind of experience now, I guess.
I love it. I hope and this sold so well that I think it's such a great sign that EA hopefully is going to be doing more of these, where like not every game needs to have these ridiculous cinematics and like a fully explorable open world. Just anyways, that's a game from this year, but it's a trend that I'm really happy to see. Did you have any so good it's great, or did you want to move on to biggest disappointment?
Oh, well, I guess we could talk about because we're going to crown our winners at the end, aren't we?
At the end, yeah. And we'll go over the user submissions as well.
There's Wargroove.
Okay, Wargroove. Yeah, tell me about that.
I mean, there's not really so much to say about that. It's a game I've been wanting to get, but it released in 2019. It looks basically like somebody just remade Advance Wars. But, I don't really mind that. Advance Wars was a tactical strategy game back on the Game Boy Advance. And it was just really fun. Like, you just move your little units around. You'd have like tanks versus infantry, and it'd be kind of like a rock paper scissors mechanic, so that some of your units would do well against some things, but others would not. And it was just like a fun little game to play through, because essentially it's a puzzle game, just with a light story wrapped around it. Mm-hmm. And just to see somebody revive that franchise unofficially was just kind of nice. And I plan on trying it at some point. It'd be a good Switch title. I'm pretty sure it's on Switch. I think it is.
I think it's also a Chucklefish game, which is interesting because when I think of sort of let's just take a game that was ridiculously popular that doesn't have a new version, really. Well, like you've always heard I've never played Advance Wars, but I've heard so many people talk about how great it was, and it reminds me of Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon. These games that people just friggin' love, but you're looking for a more modern but very traditional take on it.
Yeah, Chucklefish does a lot of these like retro style games that are just really, really decent and sometimes really good.
And they realize that the people that like these games, they don't need it to be... You could probably make it on a much smaller budget than you normally would have to worry about, because the people that want to play like a Stardew Valley or an Advance Wars type game, they just want it to be solid and just give them the gameplay and go from there.
So I guess on to our biggest disappointments.
Yeah, mine would be Observation. I loved Stories Untold. I think it was an episodic game with a sort of Stranger Things 80s visual vibe, but inside it's an incredible thriller that doesn't have any stupid jump scares, but I had goosebumps the entire time I'm playing it. I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the puzzles, I loved it, and I couldn't wait to see what they would do. And when I saw that they're making a game where you're in space, dealing with some kind of space AI, I thought, oh my god, this atmosphere in space, bigger budget, you're moving around, I couldn't wait to play it. and it just fell so flat for me. I loved the idea, but actually the actual playing of it and the story just didn't click. Maybe it was because I was streaming, and that would have been better to just play alone, lights off, no camera, no microphone. But it just it sucked. I wanted it to be great, and maybe there's some people out there that really liked it, but it didn't work for me.
I remember watching you play, and I didn't really mind it as much. I don't know. I like weird stuff though sometimes, so it's like for me, it wasn't really as I don't know. It was just like I guess I could see it being a flop if you expected to get what the previous game had provided before. Like, I guess looking at it from a different perspective, how would you have felt if you hadn't played their previous game? Do you think you would have had a different opinion of it at that point? I probably would have been more interested. I think I probably would have left thinking that was decent, but I'd like to see what else they can do. Whereas this one, I probably built up too much because I had such a great time with their last game, and maybe it's just this is way bigger in scope, and that's probably a tough thing to do for a team to ramp up, and some teams are probably just great at like a certain level. Yeah, I guess that's true. It was it did seem like they tried to make it a little bigger than it was in the previous iteration.
How about you, my friend? Your biggest disappointment?
I think if anyone knows me, it should be pretty obvious. I'd say it had to have been Borderlands 3. And I want to say biggest disappointment, but like I want to clarify that that's also one of the fewer games I played. One of the few games I played last year. So, I mean, like, it's kind of as I would have expected from a AAA title these days. Like, the game releases, you've got bugs all over the place. They're rebalancing things left and right. It just feels so clear that the game needed more time to actually kind of polish up. Then again, it seems like all games these days are that you buy on release kind of need that, or kind of show symptoms of that. So, I mean, I can't really hold it to too much of a higher standard than other games, but at the same time, it was just a little bit of a letdown for this game that people have been waiting for like 7 years, and it comes out and it's just like, the people who are most eager to try it out are the ones who get screwed over the most because they're the ones who play it in its most broken state.
Yeah, it's kind of a dangerous game they're playing with this idea of, now that we can fix things in a patch, we'll launch the game unfinished and then we'll fix it in the patch. So you're hoping if everything goes perfectly, you can have that done. The game I mentioned earlier, Star Wars Squadrons, had a few really ridiculous bugs where I had to restart my game several times to get through missions that just hung or stopped several times. And it felt like leading up to the release, there were all kinds of bad news around Gearbox 2 and the Epic Game Store. It was it was a real rough year for Borderlands.
Yeah, I mean, and now at this point, I could recommend it now because it's like they've kind of slowed down their aggressive effort on trying to like change everything. Although I probably would want to make sure to get it like where you can get like a deal where it includes all of the DLC and everything. But yeah, it was just it was kind of a moment for me that made me think like, do I really want to buy AAA titles anymore? And like for me, that stood out because I guess I hadn't really dug too deep into a lot of AAA titles in recent years before that. But that one just was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to spend $60 to $100 on a game that's effectively early access.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think your point is the best about the people that are your most hardcore fans. You're disappointing them the most, and you're expecting that, they're hardcores, they're always going to be there, but eventually they just move on. And in video games, people can find those different experiences in other places, and you can kind of end up chasing away your Borderlands fans, and they'll just, especially now, like the gaming industry knows that Borderlands model, the Destiny model, works, and we're already seeing more stuff. Like your Borderlands fans of today might end up being the Greedfall players of tomorrow.
Sounds about right.
All right, let's get into the games that we really, really liked. My number 3, my top 3 is Short Hike. I felt like this game was basically perfect. I'm surprised it wasn't longer. the movement felt really, really good. And for like a cutesy indie game of I'm going to explore an island, I was really blown away by how good the movement mechanics felt in the traversal. There's a really great progression of mechanics and a motivation to explore the world, because I think the more that you explore, the more that you can level up your sort of levitation or your floating, similar to Journey, adding on to the scarf so you can fly longer. It's a great world. There's really fun dialogue. It's an interesting puzzle to finish off. It's a great value. I am going to be so interested in what they do next. Hopefully it's better than what I enjoyed with Observation, but you really can't go wrong with this game. It's sort of like, it's almost like Breath of the Wild. It's a really tiny one bite of Breath of the Wild. It's an incredible game. My number 3.
I was going to say it's like autumn as a snack for me, because like I'm a sucker for anything with autumn theming. And seeing that game, it was just like, oh yeah, I love it already.
All right. Did you have a number 3?
Let's see, because I think a lot of ours are kind of in common. For me, the only one I have left is, well, no, I guess I have 2 left. So I'll go with one of mine here. So one of the games I was really interested in, just from an aesthetic standpoint, was Hypnospace Outlaw.
Right.
And it's a really bizarre game where you're kind of like this, sort of like a unofficial police of the internet in a 1990s kind of internet. It's basically like a time capsule almost, where they try to recreate the feeling of what it's like when you were online in the 1990s, like the weird websites, GeoCities kind of thing. And but you also have these objectives where you're supposed to be like policing the internet for various content infractions and such. And it's really bizarre, kind of quirky, but it kind of appeals to me. I mean, we are talking from a 90s kid, so like it hits those, like that nostalgia part of my brain.
I'm looking at a video right now on screen for the recording, and it's there's some stuff in there where it really reminds me of Lawnmower Man. That's sort of when, like, well, there's a lot of 90s stuff in here, but sort of that idea of when they were first messing around with computer graphics. And what do you actually do in this game? What is the what type of game is it? I see a lot of clicking.
It's kind of like, it's weird because I wouldn't want to strictly say it's like an adventure game, but it is kind of like that, because you're having to explore websites and you try to find these clues and look for infractions where somebody has like violated some kind of law, I guess, of the internet. And then you have to police that, and you report it, and then somebody else will come in and, like, I guess, grab them or something. Anyway, because I haven't got to play it yet, but it looks fantastic, at least for me. It
really does. Cool. All right, well, I would like to talk about my number 2, which is going to be Death Stranding. And Death Stranding, for me, I had a lot of really high highs and a lot of really low lows. But I would say the highest bits for me were when I first started with the game. I thought I was like really taken, obviously, by the atmosphere of it. And the sort of, I felt like, oh my God, has Kojima matured? Because the way he tells the story in the first 4 or 5 hours, I thought this is beautifully paced. The stories aren't overstaying their welcome. There's not a lot like long, annoying monologues. There's not a lot of twists for the sake of being twists. I was really intrigued in the world he created. I just wanted to be in it. And I was so into the gameplay of walking around and managing, and the risk and reward of stacking everything up and unlocking things and feeling like you're connected with people. I mean, there's a lot to be said about how much are you actually playing with people online? How much are they actually being affected? Because obviously, to make it work in the way that it does, there have to be some liberties taken. And I would say my highest point with the game is maybe about 2/3 of the way through. I just could not stop playing. I ended up playing it one day for like 10 hours, and I could have played more. Whereas, like, I just want to do some more runs, fill in all the side stuff, find some extra secret things and little Easter eggs, and just keep sticking with that gameplay. Now, when it gets to the ending, while I love what Kojima, I like the ideas he has, I don't like the way that he tells it, where you get the idea and then it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So that really kind of And especially the pacing of it, like, man, I'm an adult, and if I sit down and I want to play a game for 2 or 3 hours, and then I get to an ending part, and then I'm expected to watch 3 hours, like a whole 3-hour movie out of nowhere. I mean, it's annoying enough for you to show somebody, hey, watch this YouTube video while I hold the camera in front of your face for a minute. Forcing somebody to, here's a movie right at the end, it can be, I don't know, I found it like really clunky. So overall, like the pacing and some of the execution let me down, but there were so many high moments, and how he presented the world and the gameplay elements that he brought in that ended up being my second favorite game of the year.
I want to say that I think it's funny that your lists include what is a short hike and what is effectively the longest hike. But yeah, nice. I like the look, like the Icelandic atmosphere they had going on. I thought that was really appealing, and like I guess barring the technobabble and the way they kind of handled the ending, I liked a lot about that. I like just the idea of just hiking through this I don't know, just this desolate area.
Mm-hmm. Now we had some user submissions on favorite games. Leonot wrote me quite a bit about Death Stranding. He mentioned the rope and the stick being the oldest tools. You know, the rope pulls the good to you, the stick pushes it away. He never realized how much he would enjoy the loop of strapping a bunch of cargo on the back, bike, truck carrier, and navigating the rough terrain. And he felt that when you started to feel the grind, as Higgs would say, you get a 180 shift in gameplay and have an epic and intense MGS3 style boss fight with a certain character all throughout the well-constructed recreations of wars. I found that pretty interesting the first time. By the time it was the fourth or fifth one, I'd like, even if it is a different recreation of a different war, it was still the exact same gameplay loop. And by the fourth or fifth time, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is really boring. Leonard's talking about the social story system. He thought that was pretty innovative to do online play where everyone has a common goal to reconnect, and it is pretty cool to, like, when you're kind of on the thin line of success or failure and somebody happened to leave a ladder or something helpful for you, it's pretty cool, and then to leave that. He talked about the music, the original soundtrack by Ludwig Forsell, and the licensed songs by Low Roar, Silent Poets, Churches, Bring Me the Horizon. That was something I'll agree was like so cool when, you know, in The Last of Us, how you have that kind of like big tension and then the release and the slow walk and the characterization as the characters talk, to have like all the tension out of the game, and then you know that the game is just going to zoom out, there's going to be no combat, and you're going to listen to this song, enjoy the Icelandic landscape like you called it. And that was really cool, and something that, in terms of like, let's have some cinematic gameplay, that's a nice way of doing it. Lena wanted to sum it up. He thought it was one of the best games this entire generation, and a piece of media we absolutely need in these times where the world is less connected than ever, even if ironically enough we're more connected.
I have a feeling that was probably written also before the pandemic kicked off.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay, what was your number 2?
Oh, well, my number 2 actually counted as Hypnospace Outlaw. So basically we're already at our number 1s now, I think.
We're at our number 1s. Okay, for me it was Sekiro.
Oh, of course.
You know what? When I think of From Software games, I think they have demanding combat, there's the exploration, atmosphere, mystery, frustration, and then elation. And Sekiro, for me, I loved the way they went with the combat, where it feels really fast and intense and weighty. Now, whereas Dark Souls and Bloodborne bosses are always dodge and attack, dodge and attack, dodge and attack. And they have a big long life bar because you have to prove that you can't just luckily dodge enough and get the hits in. You need to prove that you can do the marathon of 10 minutes straight or 5 minutes or whatever of like dodging properly. Whereas with Sekiro, good art always has tension and release. And in Sekiro, the tension is obviously building because it's difficult and you don't want to lose and you can only make a few mistakes, but you're always building up that bar, building up, and you can actually be really aggressive and defensive and using the different counters. And when it just like pulls that tension so razor thin and so tight, and then all of a sudden, bam, you get that big red mark on your screen, all that tension explodes, and you get to celebrate while watching your character do that like a sweet death blow, and then it felt so good playing that game with the combat that it definitely would be my favorite of the From Software games. It does, and like in terms of I I don't know. It was like it's a friendlier Dark Souls Bloodborne game.
I feel like the description just ran through of tension release might put this on an ad restricted level.
Oh yeah, there's a big hot white explosion. Also, like the traversal and the movement felt great. You could run really fast. There isn't any fall damage. Using the grappling hook, the stealth felt awesome. The pacing of the game, where when I first started, like the simplest mobs could take me out, but then kind of cresting that first plateau of being able to stealth around them and deal with them, and then just at the point where I was having no problem with the regular guys, they changed the script around and they like bring in a new level of enemies, and this happens twice in the game for like perfect pacing all the way to the end. And when I think about the game, it's all the moments, like let's see. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Like beating the Lady Butterfly. Well, thinking that I beat the Lady Butterfly. Fighting... I think you were there for that one.
The Guardian Ape.
The Guardian Ape. When you think you beat him, you cut off his head and he picks up his head and fights you with it. Fighting your dad. The big fat drinking guy in the beginning and that other person coming in to help you out. Like mastering the Makiri counter.
And I mean, of course, you got the end boss too. Like, I don't remember how long you took in playing that, but it was like, 5 hours or something crazy?
Yeah, my last stream was 8 hours long, and I was kind of scrubbing through it today, and I think about at least like 3 to 5 hours of it are fighting that boss. And what they do is they use multiple phases so that you can't just keep throwing yourself against the one phase, which I found kind of tedious and definitely increased the length of time it took to learn, because you have to change your strategy each time. But I see the point of it.
Yeah, certainly.
Fighting the ninja in the sewers. It's just like the unique style, the way everything looks throughout the world is very cohesive and very unique to that game. The story was a little more characterization, a little more personal than a Bloodborne or Dark Souls story.
Yeah, the story. That's one thing I wasn't thinking of at first, actually. It was a way more of like it was an easier to grasp kind of thing going on too, I felt, compared to like a lot of the lore that's embedded into Souls and Bloodborne. It felt like they were very straightforward with Sekiro.
Yeah, and I think they still had a hint of sort of like this. There's the rest of this world, and it still had that kind of like weight, like the way the From Software stories make you feel like life is in Destiny or a crushing weight upon you. And I still felt like that in Sekiro, but it was a lot more straightforward. And I know that some people, they love hunting down that story in Dark Souls and Bloodborne because people figure it out together online as the first game releases. But this was definitely I put at the top for From Software games, and it is my game of the year.
Yeah, I guess if anything, I'd say they managed to achieve like the best balance I feel like they've had since any of the games they put out.
Absolutely. All right, buddy, what was your number one?
Yeah, so mine is like a little bit of a weirder one. I mean, it's probably not so much something many people would expect, but the one I thought was really cool was Baba Is You.
Okay.
And it's a delightful little puzzle game where they're basically embedding the rules of the puzzles into the world itself, and it offers some really weird little effects. Like, so you basically start off with this idea of Baba is you, and you break it down, and it's a simple sentence, right, with subject and a verb. And so like you can change it later on in the game. So maybe Baba is not you, the main character you're playing as. Maybe you stop playing as them and you play as a rock. And you have to like get all these little objectives completed. Like usually it's like they'll have something is win. So it's like once you reach the flag, you win. But I thought it was just a really amazing puzzle game because they take these really simple ideas and compose them in way more complex ways than I would have thought. And so for me, it was just pretty simply like, I thought that was probably one of the best games of the year for me.
Wow, I'm watching a trailer right now, and does it do a pretty good job of teaching you those rules and how to work with them and break them? Like, because it looks like some of the later stuff can get pretty overwhelming. Yeah,
I think the progression is kind of so that they start you off simple, which only like 1 or 2 rules, and then they build up from there. And I'm pretty sure they also have like a level editor, so you can actually make your own custom puzzles for the game. And I remember seeing some really crazy ones where like you get into that like realm of like Minecraft computer kind of simulation. I think they have something similar in this, where you can try to compose the rules in such a way that it starts making like this elaborate little machine. Wow.
Cool. Yeah, that's
I mean, I'm a sucker for puzzle games, so for me, that's why I mean, it easily tops some of the other things like broken games like Borderlands 3 and that.
Yeah, and it's so cool how unique that is. It's such a simple. It kind of reminds me of like programmer language, like X equals Y or something, and then shifting that and all the chaos that it can cause. It's so cool to see just a unique idea in that sense of like people know words and it just looks so bloody unique. So very impressive looking game. I've heard a lot about that one this year from 2019. Let's see. Jeremy, he had 2 top games of the year. He was saying Resident Evil 2 and Sekiro. Resident Evil 2 for the way it mixed the old and the new so well, making it a whole new game. Sekiro for the feeling that all From Software titles give you, that high that you end up chasing with other games but can't quite get there, chasing the dragon, so to speak. He said if he had to choose, it'd be Sekiro. Siegfried Nicolo said he'll go for Dragon Age Inquisition. That's his favorite game every year. Let's see. Leonard had some other games that he was playing that year that he really liked. Bloodborne, Final Fantasy X, all the Metal Gear Solids. Yeah, overall, 2019 was a pretty damn good year games. I mean, a lot better than 2020. There were a lot of games. I felt like this year was interesting because there were sort of like interesting releases. Apex Legends dropping out of nowhere earlier in the year. It seemed like they have started opening up of just the traditional ideas of when to release games. Those have been changing throughout the last couple of years, but it seems like now it's at a point where just anything goes, wherever you can carve out a bit of attention, especially now that E3 appears to be dead and the big game companies have realized we can get people's attention anytime we want with our own big release. Like anytime Xbox or PlayStation wants to have an event, they can get eyes on it, no problem. So it's just going to be left up to how are the indie games going to carve out their niche.
Yeah, going forward, like from this year to next year, it's going to be kind of crazy because this year I feel like we're going to have a lot of stuff where it's just going to be uncontested. Like I mean, Cyberpunk is obviously going to probably top a lot of people's lists, and it just feels like with so few games, it's like it's easier to get up there in those Game of the Year awards.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a prediction for Game of the Year 2020. That'd be mine for sure. I think Cyberpunk, the CD Projekt Red has had so much goodwill built up with gamers, and for them to finally embark into a new genre that's very gamer friendly, take everything they've learned from The Witcher and expand on it. I mean, to go from like fantasy to Cyberpunk, you got Keanu Reeves on board, and this is like Keanu Reeves' high point of internet fame. Bill and Ted just came out. Like everything is lining up for these guys to really smash it with this game. As long as the game is average, if it's competent and has a lot to look at and a decent story, I think it's going to do really well. But yeah, like you say, there's so many things that have been pushed back. So, Last of Us Part 2 came out in 2020.
We got all this pressure though that's been built up this year, and then it's going to overflow into 2021.
Right. Actually, there's a podcast where somebody was saying that something like 2016 or 15 is the greatest year in music. And what had happened was a big album had come out, I think, in 2015, and it pushed a lot of albums back. So 2016 ended up having so much more. So maybe 2021 will be like that, although we've got the shift to the new consoles. So
we can only hope. I mean, you always want to have more good games and plenty of competition.
Yeah. I mean, if 2021 has Breath of the Wild and some of the games that I was really excited to play in PS5 launch, like some of the space games, and one at and Deathloop, I think. Like, yeah, it seems like a few have been pushed back, so 2021 could be huge. All right, well, that was our Game of the Year 2019. We recorded this in 2020, October 23rd.
Still got 2 months left.
Yeah.
A little less, maybe.
All right, you can write your favorite games in the comments, of course. Bye.
See ya.